Here we are, part two of a conversation with a priestess and a pastor. And I'm up sharing my journey of how I've gone from a traditional Christian background to my life as a priestess and what that means, what it all entails. And we have Pastor Jeff asking me questions that he's curious about. So let's get the conversation started.
Welcome to the I'm Perfectly Divine podcast, a place for the strong, sensitive, spiritual seeker to recognize the perfection of your human journey as a pathway to remember. My work is to bridge both the emotional and spiritual worlds through proven and grounded frameworks that support you to live in the wholeness you already are. For over the past 2 decades, I have supported people from all around the world, as well as Fortune 500 companies, to dissolve the divisions within them and live with greater empowerment and love. This podcast is an exploration of the paradoxes that befuddle us as we live our lives being both human and divine. Together, you and I, along with other experts, will navigate integrating psychology and spirituality, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, the darkness and the light, to create greater sacred union from within. I believe through your remembering that you are innately divine, that you will allow yourself to more openly shine. So let's get to it, because your unique light is needed more than ever.
Hello and welcome back, beautiful souls. I am excited because, as promised, it is part two of a conversation with a priestess and a pastor. So this time I'm up. I am going to be sharing my experience and my spiritual path. And Jeff is here to support us in asking questions from his perspective and just kind of jumping in there with things that he may not, he may not fully understand or want clarity on, and just to really bring some depth to the conversation, because we were sharing before, I'm like, I've been swimming in these feminine waters for a while, and so things that may be natural to me now may not be natural to him, and so we hope this enlivens the conversation. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for your spirituality and your strength and your sensitivity that keeps you open and willing to grow. So before I get started, I just want to say thank you, Jeff. This is Pastor Jeff Larson, again from my church, Ozaki Congregational Church in Grafton, Wisconsin. So hi, Jeff. Thank you for joining again.
Hello. No, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this. This is great.
All right. So where I'm going to go is share my experience a little bit about how I got on this priestess path, which is like, some miraculous spiritual adventure in and of itself. And Jeff, feel free to jump in along the way or any questions that arise. So some of you have heard this, some of you may not, but I grew up Catholic. I would say very Catholic, where we went to church every week. We went to the holy days. And I also had a grandmother who was Seventh-day Adventist. And so I would go to church with her on Saturdays. So Saturdays was like, it could go from like morning to like mid-afternoon. And then Sundays I would go to church with my family. And then sometimes there was CCD in the middle of the week and so forth. And I loved church. I loved going to church. And I just, I never hesitated to say, let's go to church. And this was something that I did throughout college. People would make fun of me that I was, still going to church in those holy days and so forth. And so my identity was very much as being Catholic and being very committed in my relationship to the divine. And so initially that would have been definitely my love with Jesus, but it would also include Mother Mary. So so much so that when I started dating my now husband, when we were to get married, he grew up Lutheran, and I said, "Well, if we're going to get married, you've got to become Catholic," because I had the image in my head, like we are going to be the couple that goes to church every week, brings the family, like this was the vision. And so he agreed because he knew I had a stronger I mean, he's got a great faith, but I was just more into it, let's say. And so um and so then what the heck happened, right? Because here I am on this very traditional Catholic path. Well, during when I was getting my degree in clinical psychology, there was a small group of women that came together and we started exploring different spiritual things such as sound healing bowls and, very, to me, what represents very mild, but even back then I was like, ooh, is this okay? And then one of my friends who was a part of the circle, who I'm still very close with today, she went to see a shaman and she just could not get over how the shaman um, could see and understand her in a way without saying anything. And so I was like, okay, sign me up. I'm going to go see the shaman. And again, I'm kind of scared because it's kind of like every step that I take on my spiritual path, I'm like, all right, I'm waiting for the lightning bolt to strike me. And and what happened was every step of the way, instead, I found a deeper connection to the divine. So I meet the shaman, and she is also able to see aspects of myself without me saying a word. And she's reading me through my energy centers, through my chakras. Um, and this is a more of an Eastern concept of how to understand ourselves with these chakras. So, and she really opened me up to start studying energy in many different ways. And so I would say that's when I started shifting from Catholicism to more, okay, I'm spiritually exploring now because I'm feeling a love through exploring and tying into um, energy that I haven't felt just with my traditional Christian practice. So I continue to explore, and sometime during there, and it's weird because I can't pinpoint a moment. All I know is I got very mad and clear that the feminine was not represented at all or very minimally at church. And so I would go to church and I'd be like, okay, I see, maybe a statue of Mother Mary over there, but she just always felt kind of like put on the sidelines and not represented. And so that's where a shift began because there was an anger that came forward that was like, I can no longer go to a place of worship that does not see me, that does not understand um, the importance or recognize the importance of the feminine. And this lasted a long time. What I didn't share last time as Jeff was sharing his story is that while I've been a member of OCC for a long time, most of the time I did not go. Because it was very important for me to raise my children in some sort of faith. And there's nothing wrong if you choose not to do that. For me, because I initially started with such a deep love for Jesus, I wanted my kids to have something that they could tune towards or to turn towards. Because that was very important for me. And because my husband's Christian, then of course it was going to be Christianity. So people would say, well, how did you get your kids to go to church when you weren't going? And it was very simple, because I had such a deep spiritual practice. I mean, to this day, my practice is typically an hour each morning. And there was one time when one of my kids said, because I always said, if you don't want to go to church, that's fine. You just have to do my spiritual practice. And there was one kid that took me up on that. He lasted maybe 20 minutes and he went back to church on Sunday because he's like, I can't do this prayer and meditation thing that you do, Mom. I don't know what you're doing. Um, so that was very simple because it's just like, if you could, I want you to have a spiritual practice one way or another. You can do mine or some version of mine, or you can go to church on Sunday, which is an hour once a week. And so they chose that. But what I would say I faced in the meantime was feeling judged for not attending church with my husband. Like I was not being the good Christian woman, and yes, some of this is my own projection for sure, because this is how karma works, people. When I was Catholic and I was going to church all the time, I was the one judging everyone, being like, why aren't you going to church? And blah, blah, blah. So this is how karma works. And it did, I felt, that people didn't see me or understand how truly devoted I was, simply because I wasn't going to church. So yes, some of this was a projection, but we literally had people saying to my husband, Steve, like, oh, is Michelle just sleeping in again this Sunday? And so, I mean, as a joke, wink, wink, but a little bit of judgment there, right? And so that also kind of kept me away. I'm just like, there's a part of me that still feels angry that the feminine is not represented. I feel judged by people who are going to church, certainly not everybody. And when there were other people who were leading the services, I felt like, I mean, this might sound obnoxious, but I'm like, I feel like I'm living more from love than they are. They may know the rules, like the Bible rules, and can repeat scripture, but I think for me, it all came down to judgment. And I also want to be clear that Christians are not the only ones that judge. Priestesses judge. I think we all judge. We have our little things because we've got our hurts or we've got our insecurities. And so what happened was, I met Jeff, and I think you were very vulnerable, Jeff, about your experience and you having your own exploration of your relationship. So rather than something being fed to you and you were just like, yep, this is what I believe, and I'm going to preach that, I could feel what it was like for you to struggle with your own personal relationship to God, to the divine, and that that was important to me. That made me feel like, okay, like what it's like to kind of struggle with this. And so then I don't know, we met a couple of times because Jeff's really good. He came to our church and then he was having coffee dates with every member to get to know all of us. And I reached a point where I was just like, I'm ready to come forward with this. And so I had my journey, and this is why I understand that journey where you're so mad that the feminine is not represented that you just can't go to church. Like I was there for, at least a decade, and I get that. I think it was also my own self-protection because there's so much fear when you walk this priestess path, of all the stuff that gets tied into it as, you're a witch, you're going to be burned at the stake, you're doing something evil, this is dark, this is bad. And so I also had to get to the place where I knew the love that I was, um, regardless of what other people would do with it, as I shared this with you. But I will say, Jeff, that you were definitely like a safe, one of the first safe people outside of my immediate family or friends that were in more of these divine feminine circles that I felt safe to share this with. So it was really significant to me. So maybe I'll pass it on to you. Like, do you remember this? And was it weird for you? And why don't you jump in a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no. All of that is great. I mean, and I've as you and I've talked, I guess I've heard some of that, but I had not heard maybe a lot of that too, and so no, that is super interesting, and I mean, I'm of course, so glad that we've connected like this, and that OCC has been become a place, or is becoming a place where you do feel comfortable coming, right? And I think that's great, and I think this, we have so much to learn from, I think from one another and from different, perspectives. And I mean, I think that for me, I mean, as you say, I wrestled through some things or whatever, but hey, I mean, I spent a lot of years judging too, right? I spent a lot of years where I had things all wrapped up, and that type of thing, and I think that certainty that we've got it just produces fear, and I think when we can let go of that, then all of a sudden we don't have to fear somebody else's perspective, and we can be curious, and we can say, help me understand, or tell me, I think that's a great thing. So it's been, been really helpful for me, learning this from you. I mean, the divine feminine, right? I mean, yeah, nothing I grew up with. um can we go back to, or I want to, like as you grew up, yeah, within the Catholic tradition, and this type of thing. Again, you were kind of gung ho, as
Yeah.
kind of a, but I mean, within that tradition, as you reflect on it now, like, would you say that growing up that you experienced God as loving? I mean, was God, or kind of what was you? Yeah, if you were
Yes.
to look back on it now, who was God, and how did you experience God within that tradition?
So my relationship with Jesus was very, very loving. My relationship to the church and Catholicism felt very rigid, judgmental, and filled with shame. Like, for all of it. It's just like, I mean, really, for being human. Um, and so, but it was also, like I said, every step of the way that I took with following my heart, and I've shared this story with you before, Jeff, but and maybe in my podcast, but one of my first turning points before the divine feminine with my relationship to the divine was when I went through a broken engagement. And I was so pissed. I was so pissed because I felt like I am following the rules. I go to church. Like, how could this have happened? And I'm like screaming at God. And this was again, so much of my spiritual journey has been like, okay, I'm going to get struck by lightning. Here it comes. Um, and this was truly an opening to me having a deeper personal relationship with the divine. So instead of looking at God as this male authoritarian that's going to, like, judge me and, damnation and all that, like, I was met with so much love and miracles along the way, really. And so, and people that know my story, 3 weeks later, I met my husband. So, um, it was a turning point for something inside of me where rather than look, and this is something that I think the church puts on people, which is like, I mean, literally in prayers, you're saying, I'm unworthy and we're sinners. And which just amounts to like we're bad and we're wrong. And so while I always felt this deep love from Jesus, from Mother Mary, it was very hard. And is part of the reason why I feel like I became judgmental is because it's like, here's all these ways that you're supposed to be. And of course, it feels impossible to measure up to that. And so you kind of I became, um, judgmental, which is not the love of the divine, not the love of Jesus, not the love of Mother Mary. And so, I feel blessed that I've always had a deep and close connection to the divine. That was it was regardless of church, I had a connection. But church, which was the way in, or what I was taught was the way in to making a connection to the divine, what felt very, here's the way. If you're outside of this, you're bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And and then so the yeah, the turning point for you. I mean, it was all positive, like, or you would say, as you kind of experienced it, and then you started going to the shaman, and then wait a second, maybe some things outside of this tradition are not bad. Maybe there's some good things there. Then it's this the realization of the divine feminine and its exclusion from this tradition. And then I mean, I know you've talked. How was that? Well, I don't know if you want to talk about this or whatever. Like, um, you sort of produced in you some anger or whatever, and then you were walking through this with some friends, but it was difficult with people from. I mean, before you got to OCC and all of that, the maybe your family or the Catholic Church, or I mean, you just stopped going to the Catholic Church, or how was that? How was that transition?
Yes. All I remember is it wasn't that long when Steve and I were married. Like here I have him, convert to Catholicism, and I'm like, I mean, it might have been like a year and a half that we were married, and I was just like, I can't go to church anymore. And he's like, wait, like I got used to like the incense and the rituals, and I'm like, I can't go. I can't go, and I don't know what to tell you. And so then we went on a path to find a more spiritually open church, which we found. We were living in Chicago at the time, and we would drive to Evanston to a Baptist church, but the minister there was super open. He was into Buddhism, and he was into he understood. And so that was a safe place as well. That was also very much in the beginning, um, of my path. But I will say, like, it was so much so that I was like, um, I'm not baptizing my children. I don't believe in this sense that like my kids are going to go to hell. My parents were like, they're going to hell. Eventually, I decided when they were still young, like Todd, like I think Avery was probably 5 or 6, and the boys were, 18 months younger than her. I live right off of Lake Michigan, and we did with one of the other pastors, we did an experience within Lake Michigan. Now that was very significant to me because I wrote the baptism experience. So I included my Native American Cherokee ancestry. I included some things that were more spiritually neutral. And the pastor was willing to go along with this. I'm sure he thought it was odd, but I appreciated that he was willing to go along with this. And so, so there were ways that I was still, there were ways I was just trying to navigate this. At the same time, I just kept getting calls to go further and further with the divine feminine. So I I am someone that even as a child, I would be woken up to spirits, I would say. I would see apparitions of Mother Mary when I was young, and I would see things. And so much so, like my parents did not know what to do with this. They're like, just pray. And I would be screaming the Our Father out loud, waking up the whole family because I didn't know what this was, and they didn't know what to do. So, anyways, there came a point where Mary Magdalene came to me and she was just like, this is your invitation. And for me, most spiritual invitations, I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I want to do this. And it takes a couple of times. Even I told Jeff that I'm like, us doing this interview has probably been around for like a year and it kind of keeps, pestering me, poking me, and being like, okay, you're gonna do this. And that's how it was with Mary Magdalene. She came forward, and then there were again in the middle of the night. I had things come forward for me, and she came forward, and then there would be synchronicities where there would be somebody that was teaching about Mary Magdalene, or there was just things that kept saying, "This is the way. This is the way." And every time I stepped into it, all I can say is that not only did my heart expand more, but the things about Christianity that didn't make sense to me, I could start to understand. Um, and and not only was it okay that I was questioning the things that I was traditionally brought up in, it was important. It was important for my journey, um, and my understanding. And so again, I feel like it has deepened my understanding of Jesus, Yeshua in Hebrew, and uh, and his path, his teaching of the way of love. Um, but every step of the way, there was also just me being able to address people's fears, even in my own family. Because when I entered going into the priestess path, and people say, what is that? And it sounds, and it's just like, I mean, the best way I can explain it is an expression of understanding the divine feminine through different goddesses um, and their lineage. And how Mary Magdalene is likely tied to these lineages. Um, but it's these feminine archetypes of our that bring, I think, greater understanding to our human experiences and how to bring compassion and love more deeply into what we do. And so, yes, there's different goddesses represented. There is certainly a nature element that's a part of this because it's really bringing us into unity consciousness that we are all one. And so a part of my practice with that is every day I am on the earth, feet on the earth, and I am bowing to the elements. Why? Because it's what we're all made of. And I recognize this energy, um, this loving energy that moves through us that I don't fully understand, but I want to be connected with because I also know it's moving in mysterious ways through everybody. And so it's just my way of that devotion to all of who we are, and to understand how these elements are working through me. So I don't know if you want to take a pause there, if this is sounding, crazy to you, or how you take that in.
No, no, no. I mean, all of that is great. All of that is great. Like what comes to my mind. Um, uh, well, yeah. Let me say what comes to my mind. I got some other things I wanted to ask about, but like all of these things, it sounds like, right? Like you're creating this spirituality for yourself that makes sense to you, right? And that these things that are representing the divine to you, whether that's the earth or that's the, you know, Native American things or whatever, you know what I mean? And uh, and I think that's great. I mean, the pushback from the tradition with I grew up in, right, would be like, well, you're just making it up, like you're just creating your God the way you want, kind of thing, whatever. And I mean, this tradition, while the Bible is God's word, and that's whatever, and but like I think if we could just acknowledge that tradition too, we are all making it up. Right? We're making it up. Like one thing you said to me, I think one of the first times we had coffee or whatever, ever, you said something about like, my version of Jesus. Like you were talking to me, tell me about your version of Jesus, right? I thought that's a great line. You know what I mean? That like, let's just be honest. I mean, I don't know who Jesus is. All I have is my version of Jesus. I don't know who God is. All I have is my version of God, And so I think it is. I think that's great. And the other thing that comes to mind, I mean, like you say, like here you're getting people from church that are sort of being judgmental about you not coming to church and you feeling like, look, I'm representing it better than you, you know what I mean? Like love better than you are, kind of thing, right? And there was one guy from that came out of the evangelical tradition. He wrote a book called The Sin of Certainty. Pete Enns is his name. And in those traditions, some people would think, man, he's gone too far, right? He's down the, whatever. So somebody asked him in a interview. They said, Pete, like people would say that you've gone too far, but from where you stand, can you look further down the line and see somebody that you think has gone too far, right? And I thought Pete's answer was just so good. He was like, he says, I just can't divorce that answer from the quality of the person that you're talking about. Does whatever perspective they have, does it lead them to love and to peace and to love of self and love of others and hope in the world? He's like, then the proof is in the pudding. You know what I mean? And so I think for all these things that you're doing, and that has led you to love and peace and hope. You know what I mean? And I think, man, that's what we're going for. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So good for you.
Aw. See, this is why we love Jeff. See, I mean, there are Christian churches where there is open, and and this is exactly why I wanted to have you on and people to experience that. And yes, and thank you. And I will say, the more I have gone, in this path of the divine feminine, as you know, part of this with Mary Magdalene has been studying these ancient texts that have been revealed that have just resurfaced, right? And they have been hidden. And Jeff has supported me with bringing a group to the church. We call it the Study of Ancient Texts. It's these ancient texts that have been discovered from the late 1800s. Most of that's the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and then most of them in the Nag Hammadi, which is in the mid 1900s, were discovered. But these are ancient texts dating back to the same time period as the Gospels of the New Testament. And so I'm very passionate about this. I love that we have this group now at our church, and we are bringing forward people from that are also from Catholic churches. We have a Quaker in the group. We are bringing people from all over because these texts, and this is part of why I believe, and those who have gone on this divine feminine path or a Gnostic path, which is the whole point of this is to know ourselves so that we can come back to knowing that we are love. And and so the whole point of like, are you making this all up? And I love your response. Well, aren't we all? But I would also say is that part of the reason why these texts were buried is because there is no greater knowing than our heart. And that's what these texts keep bringing us back to. There is no greater knowing besides our heart. And so there's a reason that we have a version of Jesus that is very rule based, because that's how we control people and make them, obedient, versus when you know your heart, people outside of you cannot control you the same way, because you are so devoted to the divine within your heart. Um, when you know it's coming from love, where it would never hurt another, and so forth. And so um that's what I love about exploring these texts, because it's not one text, it's not two, it's like multiple texts, that all the ones that have been buried are basically saying, know thyself, and know thyself through your heart, and you will come to remember the love that you are. And I mean, like that has changed everything. And that's why I came to you and said, well, my version of Jesus is this, because um that really healed a lot of the shame and the stuff that was like, you're unworthy. And it was just like, oh my goodness, like um we need to know this. We need to know about this, and to know that for some people, and that's what's also beautiful, because we've had this group for a year now, and um, I would say when I first shared it, there were some people who were like, ooh, and there were some people who were like, oh no. We've gotten people to join outside the church, and there's also people that came up to me and they're like, Michelle, there's nothing about you or anything, but this is just not my thing. And I'm like, I get it. Like, your relationship with God is so personal. And so I'm glad you dipped your toe in and just said, yeah, nope, not me. And cool, And so, but I just love that in this group, which tends to be more women, that, like, I think just about every time there's tears shed, because there's just a sense of feeling seen and understood in a way that they haven't before. And that's what has continued to lead me on this path and this journey.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. That is great.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah. Well, no, I wanted to ask you too. Like, I, um, as we all kind of wrestle with our own, relationship with God, or relationship with the divine, or and learning all these things, and coming out of the tradition that traditions that we've been a part of, right? Like, how do you, um, now sort of now or continue to deal with, or sort of this anger, or about the divine feminine, or sort of judgment of, right, maybe other people. I mean, if I can only, I mean, speaking for myself, right, I mean, I find I can sense some either anger or frustration, right, against the tradition that I came out of, and almost like why can't they see it? Like, how can they believe what I so firmly believed not that long ago, right? I mean, it's crazy,
Right.
Or then I find myself, then I can get into a sort of almost a reverse holier than thou, right? Then I can feel some, well, I've been enlightened now, and they, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
right.
so I'm sort of condescending, So, I mean, if,
Yes.
yeah, any comments on how you deal with those things? Yeah.
I've been through all of that for sure. For sure. Yes. Like mad. And then, yes, I'm spiritually superior because
Right, right.
I know more than you do, whatever. And that all went away through this journey, because and more recently, in the last few years, and it certainly helped me coming forward with the church and saying, this is who I am. I came forward first with you, then I came forward with a group of women, and in our church. And like I said, I think I scared people a little bit because I was so excited. I talked about a lot of different things, but I'm like, you know what? I just feel like, first of all, I know and I feel the love in our church, and I feel the love represented in what you share. Um, and that ultimately, that's what matters to me. And so I went through that period of anger because there was such grief of the divine being hidden and misrepresented and not understood. And that was so much of how I felt. And once I found the courage within me to just say, I get it. Like, I've been hurt by others who judge me, but it was just more me becoming like, I know who I am. And I still, to this day, I mean, even putting this was the hesitation of having this conversation with you online. It's just like, you don't know how people are going to take it, and that's not my responsibility. And really getting to that point in my own, I would say, both psychological and spiritual growth, to be able to say what other people do and judge says more about them than myself. And just really anchored into, I know the love I am. And it took me a while to get there because every place that I was exploring spiritually, I was told is wrong, is the devil, don't do it, don't trust it. And even there was a time, even with my kids, when I first did the Priestess Path. We did a ceremony where you basically initiate yourself, and it's very sacred. You're being with the earth, and you're being with the water, and we were invited to draw symbols, like, on our body, like with makeup or whatever. And I had some like spirals on my face, and I was in a place of silence, but the boys saw me, and afterwards it really freaked them out, and they were like, Mom, did you join a cult or something? And I'm like, dude, I'm like, first of all, I hope you know my heart better than that. Second of all, we're in Wisconsin, people, and Packer fans are always putting stuff on their face. I'm like, it's okay for them to put stuff on their face, and but me, now I'm in a cult. And so it's just like, so I get it. I get, it's just like this subconscious way we've been taught to fear everything feminine. Um, and for me, some of the times where I was most hesitant were so I got the call from Mary Magdalene, but I started getting woken up in the middle of the night with what is traditionally considered dark goddesses. Hecate, Lilith, Morgana. These are like the dark goddesses, and they were waking me up in the middle of the night, with these initiations to teach me, um, what we fear about the feminine is exactly what we need right now. And so my work is always coming back to the psychological as well. And so I really feel that, there is a breaking down of our egos that the divine is leading us through, which challenges our identity. And so it is scary. It is impulsive. It is the part that cannot be controlled, because it is there to break us open. And we fear these goddesses, and we fear being broken open, but what we're really fearing is the breaking of our ego. But it's just our ego. And so I really had to, and I was scared. I was scared to have these relationship with these so quote unquote dark goddesses, because they're dark, they're evil. And it's like, the these are the most underappreciated divine energies, divine aspects that are guiding us through our most difficult times. Now, is Jesus doing the same thing? Yes and no. For me, my experience is, there's something that I gain by receiving these feminine aspects that tell me, you need to slow down. You need to stop. You need to be in the nothingness. You need to be in the emptiness. you need to reclaim pleasure. You need to trust your emotions. Like all of this is in the darkness, and it is very nonlinear. It's not rational, and it is about trusting yourself. And what I'll say is that through that experience, it has led me on this journey where um like I just try to live my life where it's not, I mean, I'm definitely not great at it, but I try to live my life where I don't listen, where I'm making it about what the divine wants me to do and not what my ego wants me to do. My ego wants me to be like, stay in line, be the person that fits in the box. And my spirit is like, we don't fit in the box. This is what we're doing. And to continue to trust that. And what I'll say is every step of the way, while it has scared me, it has led me to experience greater and greater love in life. And so, I there was a time I would say I don't know if I believe in evil. I don't give a lot of attention to evil. I think there are people that want to power over and will use their relationship to source energy in an unhealthy way, whether that's a priestess or a Christian or a Muslim or any spirituality. And so I believe I mean, I know that there's people that can be in that space, but that's just not really where, I put a lot of attention or energy towards. Um, so I don't even know why I got on this tangent, but that's where I am.
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, and what about um, so like you would, if I'm surmising here right, like I don't like the word sin either. Even like it's just been used with too much condemnation, right? Um, and yet we would all acknowledge. I mean, maybe if we tried to use the same concept or whatever, that we all have an ego that we want to break down, so to speak, and follow the divine, um, rather than whatever sort of selfish part of our ego would want us to do. I mean, is that a fair way of describing sort of
Yeah.
a simple? Is that yeah?
Yes, but what I would say is that what I find through the ancient texts that were buried, as well as more through the divine feminine, is that rather than, and in the Gnostic text, it says sin is simply missing the mark.
Yes.
And we're going to miss the mark. It's part of being human. So there's just not the judgment around that.
Yes. Yeah.
And I do experience Jesus as compassionate for sure. There's just a different energy with a feminine compassion. Um, yeah, and so this is more my own personal take. All of this is my personal take, but I would say for me, the feminine compassion is, of course, you get to be human. Of like we're here to be human. And the more we have compassion around when we miss the mark, the more we don't get defensive, the more we can have compassion for one another when they miss the mark. And that's been part of my healing. That's why I've been able to go back to church, because I know what it's like to be devoted, and you are doing your best to devote yourself to love. And we're all doing it in a frame that we know. It's still like there's not anger anymore, but when I go to church, I kind of chuckle because there's songs that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so obvious. They just replaced like him and the masculine in something that's like so feminine. It's like it's like these creation stories, and I'm like, come on, like creation is like, the feminine. So I mean, I kind of chuckle now, but I think for me, the feminine has given me a deeper sense of empathy of how, yeah, we're all trying to do our best, and um, and I'm not better than anyone else. And it was important for me to have an in-person community. So I had, these beautiful priestess circle online. And, I'm so grateful to have a place where there are people like me. Because before I was like, oh my gosh, no one's like me. Now I feel like I'm like the weird aunt in the family of our church. It's, it's like, oh, she's a little out there, but hey, we love her.
We need the weird ant. It's good.
So, yeah, so it's like, yeah, there's some pieces, and and as I've shared with you, there's some pieces um, of the New Testament that are read or whatever. I just try to take in what's there for me. So a lot of times I'm closing my eyes and I'm being willing to take in what I'm meant to hear. And every time I'm there, there's something I'm meant to hear. And I'm grateful to experience the different expressions of love that each person brings. And that's part of spiritual humility that I've gained, and that I think was part of these early Christian circles, was not let's know scripture and let's memorize things. It was what are you getting out of these teachings, and how do they open your heart, and how can I learn from your heart so that my heart can open even more. And so that's something that I always try to bring forward in our group of the study of ancient texts. But that's certainly how I practice um, my relationship with the divine, whether it's with the divine feminine, or more in traditional realms. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. That was my other question was going to be, and you brought up, just the importance of in-person community, right?
yeah,
And we say at OCC all the time that the church is here to be a community for people to belong to and to give people hope. A community that mourns, cries with people, and rejoices with people, right? And that where we learn from one another. Uh, and I mean, we all need that, right?
yes.
We all need the interaction and the support and love and the stretching, um, I mean, we would all acknowledge, yeah, we're all, if I don't know, trying to be a better version of ourselves and trying to live with less ego and more love, and we do that best in community. Is that
Um, I think we learn from each other best in community. I mean, sometimes I feel that, at least for me, my relationship has been very personal, very much a need to go inward, to be solitary. I'm grateful I had that time. Maybe I needed that more because I was kind of going against the grain of everything that was around me. So I had to get more centered in myself. But I
sure?
think once I got centered and I got clear, and it's like, I know that people can have their opinions and I'm still going to be okay. I still know who I am. That there's been, I will just say that I have been more received than I ever would have imagined. I mean, by you, by being able to join or create this group, and then have women just like, I mean, they get it. And it's like we're seeing each other. And so it's worth it. It's worth testing the waters to try different communities. Um, it's worth putting ourselves out there, even if you're the weird aunt, the weird uncle, the weird, that doesn't fit the box. And that was really part of the reason why I wanted for us to just share openly our experiences, our differences, but also our respect for one another. And, with hopes that for people who feel spiritually homeless, like I once did, for people who feel like, I know I have this relationship with Jesus, but I also have this as well. I feel like we are an expression that you and I in our conversation, but also where we're being led, I think, in this movement of um, the way of love, or the early Christian church when Jesus was preaching with Mary Magdalene, that it really is more about and and inclusiveness versus like you're either this or you're that, and
Yeah,
and that's my hope, is that we recognize that, we recognize, and that people find hope in that, it maybe 20 years ago it felt very either or, and I get that, but I feel like
yeah,
there are more openings happening into, you know yeah, to try to um, create community, because we will continue to learn from each other, and I think that's the whole point, is like that
yeah,
we can continue to expand our hearts through each other, and through our differences, right? It's just like now
right.
more than ever, how can we see each other and be in communication and respect each other, even through, like, I don't see things exactly as you do, but I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And we're open to learn from one another, right? And um, sometimes people, somebody I don't agree with, and then I really think about what they're saying. Well, I can take this, and just like you say, I mean, I'm really glad about that. Yeah, Sunday morning doesn't hit. Different people take different things, and I know we're still a Christian. I mean, we're a particular expression of faith, and we use the Bible as our scriptures, right? And not everything is for everybody. And you know, I, I'm I've I mean, I have said too, I mean, part of my evolving journey is I'll tell people, I'm going through a passage of scripture that we're going to read on Sunday morning or whatever. And I don't like this one particular verse, or I really don't so I just leave it out. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And right, which 30 years ago, I mean, I've never done that. Right. And so there's just a greater freedom in that. And yeah, we're not going to understand everything, and not everything's going to be for us, and and we can just leave it out, and that's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
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 and what I'll say is, I'll try to wrap this up, but I've had people, when I first started the group, it was like, are we studying the divine feminine? And then people were coming up to me and they're like, Michelle, I just don't believe God is a woman. And I'm like, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is that the divine has feminine and masculine aspects. And for some people, not having that feminine aspect, it feels very diminishing, because we know the power that is there. Those of us who go on this path to studying the divine feminine, it's this our understanding is that there would be no resurrection of Jesus without Mary Magdalene there. She was the one preparing him, there with him, and was the one who proclaimed his resurrection in the end. And so it really is this bringing forward of the divine feminine in union with the divine masculine, with equality with the divine masculine. And so women that are studying this path of the divine feminine can get very hurt by Christianity. But um, my take is not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because it's like, to me, Christians today were not there when the Romans decided, like, these are the texts that we use, and this is how we're going to do this. And so, Christians are just expressing their love for the divine, their love for Jesus. And yes, there are aspects of Christianity that continue to diminish or not properly raise the divine feminine, how I would like to see her in equality. And yet, to me, it's through these relationships, it's through these conversations that we can just start to have the conversation. And again, for some people, it will resonate. For others, it's like, whoa, what the heck are you talking about? And that's totally okay. But I am just very clear where I am at right now, that part of my journey is just to be completely okay with who I am, how I was made, how I'm meant to express the love of the divine through me, which includes both the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And yeah, I mean, it's overly simplistic, but it's, to me, it's like if you were raised by one parent, and sometimes people do an amazing job being raised by one parent, but I think there's a beauty to having a role model, or role models of both the feminine and masculine energies, because they just bring another perspective and
Yeah.
understanding. And so that's been the case for me. I feel that there's a calling for more, that's for more people. And I just appreciate you, and again, your humility and openness, and to say, and honestly, to see me and be like, I know Michelle's happy. I know she's at peace, and I don't quite understand everything that she's talking about or whatever, but like I feel seen and respected, and not judged. And so I'm just grateful for that, and grateful that because of that, I'm able to share my perspective with those who feel drawn to it as well. So thank you for that.
It's great. It's great. Thank you for bringing it to us. It has been great, and really, I think helpful for our church, helpful for me. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, everyone, I think we should wrap it up. But I certainly appreciate you joining us and exploring this with us. And again, the intention is just to know, like, wherever you are is you are being divinely guided, and to know that there's a place for you. It can be online with people who study the divine feminine. It can be online by tuning into OCC. If you're in Wisconsin, come to church. Keep exploring for your people, and put yourself out there, knowing you are the love that you are. And know, as always, that there is nothing to prove, just to remember. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everyone.
I am so honored you have joined me today. If you enjoyed the I'm Perfectly Divine podcast, subscribe so you don't miss any of our power-filled episodes. Also, if you know another who is strong, sensitive, and spiritual, and wants to dive deeper into emotions and ancient wisdom so they too can create profound peace and fulfillment from within, please share this podcast. Thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to reconnecting with you soon.